I'm going to give you stuff right now that you can use tomorrow or Monday in your project work, in your daily work. I want to talk to you about data-driven personas, or personae as I was brought up calling them. There's too much in the way of fiction, and I think you all know that. But not many people know, how do you actually create a deck of personae that actually perform? And when I say perform, contribute to conversion, contribute to attitude change, contribute to those things that you want to change. So let's talk about personae. I call them personae, and I'm probably going to call them personae. You might call them personas, tomato, whatever, okay? I just got brought up by an old guy from the psychology world. So let's start off by blowing some myths away, okay? Some misconceptions. What aren't personae? They're not works of fiction, and we know that. As I'm a freelancer, that means I get to go around lots of different clients and see lots of different work from different agencies, from different practitioners. Some of the personae I've seen should be illegal. They are really, really dangerous works of fiction. You cannot be doing fiction. You cannot. I'm going to explain to you why in a moment. Secondly, personae are not artificially intelligent. I've literally heard of product managers wanting to put a cardboard cutout in the meeting room and say, let's ask Dave, what would he do? You can't do that with an artificial... You can query it in terms of what is that segment going to do, but you can't ask it like it's intelligent, okay? Personae are not static entities. And again, as I'm going to show you very shortly, you don't just build them and walk away, which most people do. This is a big one. Personae are not templates. Now, I know that if I was to ask some of you, could you make some personae, you'd probably go grab a template from Google. And that's not the right approach. And I'm going to show you, you don't need to do that, okay? So we know what they're not. Let's talk about what they actually are. Fundamentally, and you've probably heard this from a number of other presenters today, they are containers for insight. They are containers for data. Okay? That's all they effectively are. They're nothing more than that, but they are very, very powerful containers of insight. So they're always, always, always constructed from data. If you don't have the data, it doesn't go in. I'm pretty sure you guys all know that bit, aka data-driven. Personae must also help inform the design. So when you're constructing your personae and you're constructing the sections that go in them, you've got to be thinking, who's going to be using this next? What can they do with that? If you say, Dave likes skydiving, you're going to have to extrapolate, what does skydiving mean? He's a risk taker, he's not scared of heights, blah, 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 blah. Somebody's got to be able to design to that on page generally. What do I do with that? So it's generally got to be useful, informative information, data. And personae are regularly revised and updated. Now, because there's so much garbage personas in the world, no one ever goes back to them. No one maintains them. They just go in the drawer and they get forgotten about. Usually. That's my experience on the journeys that I've been. That's what I see happen regularly. Personas are ultimately about the user needs and the context within which they arise. Okay, you know that this is 101 stuff. They can be about anything you want, but the validity message that I was putting out earlier is absolutely critically essential in your personas. What we mean by that is how accurately do they represent the audience's segments that they're meant to, that you intend them to. So let's get into some practical stuff. How do you actually go about creating a deck of personae? This is the wrong way that gets done all day and every day. You identify your segments, whatever those segments might be, young, old, male, female, whatever those segments are. And they might be really subtle, really, sports fan, movie lover, what have you. Download a template, populate it with a bunch of fiction, we're done. Brilliant, amazing work, well done. That's not the right way. This is the right way. Well, this is one of the right ways. Far be it for me to be, absolute. Identify your segments, define the container, define the sections of data that it's going to be handling, populate it with evidence, and then iterate it until the end of time. Unfortunately, I don't see enough of this stuff going on, but that is the special sauce, the secret sauce, to effectively making your personae perform. It's an ongoing, iterative, intergenerational process. When I say generational, I'll come back in a bit. I mean generational, not between me, my mum, my grandparents. I mean between your predecessors on that project and your successors on that project. So, first of all, you have to identify the segments or a specific persona in your audience. Now, I can't tell you how to do that exactly right now. You're all from different brands, different projects, different audiences. But typically, you'll have a sense of these divisions, either through your web analytics, in terms of new customers versus repeat customers. It might be through lab observations or in the field, or it might be indirect through remote observation. Once you've got your segments, though, your example factors for that might be gender, age, role, socioeconomics, psychographics, competence, or familiarity, confidence, whatever you'd like. Typically, premium purchasers, new users, mothers and fathers, investors, retired people, students, proactive. It's always going to be a function of your audience and your brand, obviously. So, for example, I did work for the second largest beer company. I think they're probably now the largest beer company in the world through acquisition. These were the 5 personae that actually came out. One was a non-government official, the consumer, the person actually drinking the beer, the investor who's investing in the beer, the journalist who's writing about the beer, and the job seeker who wants to work for the beer company. And they all have very, very, very different user needs of the experience. Also did work for a hotel group, and this was more of a more polar. So you had uncomplicated versus sophisticated travelers versus first-timers against repeat customers. And people can appear anywhere within that matrix. Section number 2. How do you define the sections of the persona? You're not downloading a template, right? So you've got a blank piece of paper in front of you and you're thinking, heck, what am I doing now? And that's, blank pieces of paper are usually a nightmare. What insight do you already have? What data do you have access to? This is seriously important. It is always, in my experience, better to have a lean persona of valid insight than a really fancy, packed-out persona that's full of garbage. Okay, it happens to be a bit of BS. That's not good enough, and it's really not good enough. I would much rather see the thing on the left, knowing that I can design from that with confidence, or at least it's going to go into the lab with a level of confidence, than the one on the right, where you're literally just throwing the dice. It's utterly irresponsible. Don't do it. Stop your colleagues from doing it. Don't let anybody do that. So over time, you've got your insight container. And you might only have a headline to it. And we'll call this one retired repeat for the moment. Over time, you're going to just add sections in. Okay? So you've got a new user, you've got hypotheses and user needs in there. Just simple, basic elements. How do I start to define the sections of the persona? So first of all, you've got to remember, at all stages, this is an insight container. It's a jar, it's a bucket, it's a filing cabinet. It's your container. If you have data that doesn't have the right bit in it, put it in there. There's no rules that's hard and fast on this. If I need a section to contain psychographics, create a section called psychographics, put your data in there. So your initial sections can change over time as you add more insight. People feel like the persona is on rails, like it's this blueprint. It's your blueprint to hold your data on your brand for your audiences, okay? So feel free to change them. Forget analysis paralysis. Don't overthink it, just flipping do it. Making a start is always better than planning on making a start. I think Claire, the previous speaker, pretty much said that as well. Blank sheets, analysis paralysis, just standing there going, gosh, what am I going to do? Just put something down and iterate it at a later date. It's always better to start small. So, why do templates suck? Templates suck because it's their container for their insight on their customers about their product or service. And usually, yours is about your customers, your product, your insights, your customers, your product or service. Now, it doesn't matter if you are competing brands. It doesn't mean to say your audiences have the same needs, okay? So, for example, and this is just an example, if you're a telco like Virgin Media and Sky, you can't use each other's templates to store your data. It might be a great first hypothesis or a great first starting point, but their users are not the same as yours. They might both have broadband needs or television needs or telephone needs, but how it's expressed and executed is fundamentally different. If your container is wrong, it's impossible or bloody hard to fit the insight in. So change the container. Don't use other people's containers. So the fundamentals. This is the stuff that goes in pretty much everything. This is basic stuff. What defines a segment? The factual description of the persona. And when I say factual, I've put that in italics because you can't start talking, Alex likes playing golf and on Wednesdays he picks his nose or whatever that stuff is. You've got to have data for it. If you've got data for it, great, by all means. But stop the science fiction or this fictional garbage that goes in that preamble, which you can't design from, it's got no validity, it's garbage. Don't do it. Technology usage. You want to know the devices, the operating systems, what assistive technologies they are using. But ultimately, and I think most of the speakers today, everyone's talking on the same level, we all use user needs as the currency of what we do. And associated with user needs are, of course, pain points. They must feature. In my mind, they are the most important part of that deck, of that persona. But that's boring stuff, right? You know that. You didn't come here to hear that. You came here to hear this. So, user journeys. Don't be afraid to put in user journeys. Golden journeys, steel threads as I've heard them called. Whatever the various journeys are for that segment, for that audience, put them into your persona. Back them up with the web analytics. Information architecture. How does it differ for each of these personas? In the example I showed you for the beer company, that's one corporate website being accessed by 5 different personae, all with different requirements of the data and how they're going to find it. Well, those keywords and the IA and the navigation supporting it is all critical to you getting access to that information, right? And just assuming that I'm the same as you, is the same as her, is the same as him, is not going to work. Copy for any content type people in the room. There are certain keywords, certain semantics, certain languages which definitely differ between these audiences. If you're talking about that beer company again, the NGO or the journalist are going to have really different, more kind of official language that they're looking out for than the beer drinker or somebody who wants to go work for that company. And you can talk in different tones of voices. There's a whole. This is not my area, content design. Speak to content designers, but we support them, and our research informs them, and their research informs us. Again, user needs and pain points because they're ubiquitous, and of course, peer-reviewed literature. Now, as I was kind of talking about this morning, there's a whole shed load of psychological literature out there, decades and decades, century of work. Use the databases, use Athens, use Google Scholar, use Sightseer, any of the online or academia.edu, use any of those to start looking what's relevant to your segment, to your project, to their user needs, their pain points. Put them into the persona. Why not? So, a golden journey, this kind of thing, your funnel basically, or the journey that they're going on. You can put the golden journey in. So home products, this is where they went to, this is the most common journey for that particular audience. They went in, they chose a product, they went to the section hub, they got into the product page, added it to the basket and checked out. But there are also pain points, and pain points are often much more valuable than a lovely, slick golden journey, because we really learn from the pain points also. Because pain points are user needs not being met. If they're not being met, there's bounce, there's a short, less amount of information consumed on page, money goes down, conversion goes down. Putting the pain points in the user journey into your persona is going to have a huge effect, because you're going to be iterating them constantly. As you resolve these pain points, you fix your journey in your personas. So we talked about information architectures. Again, this is a really simple IA of apples. Showing the route through the IA with those keywords or those section labels, again, has got tremendous value to go into your deck. Also, the rationale, the reasoning, and any data supporting that. If you're using TreeJack, in fact, everyone's using TreeJack. Actually, quick poll. Who does manual card sorts still? Yeah. Oh, sorry. One of us. I've got into so much trouble with manual card sorts, and it's just organizationally an absolute nightmare. But if you've got card sort data, if you've got TreeJack or anything from sort of optimal workshop stuff to put down, again, put the matrices, the dendrite diagrams, put them in there. User needs. Now again, this is our currency, this is our world. So I need to do something so I can achieve this. I need to know where I can find the annual reports so that I can find out what their financial rating is. That was a very real one from that beer project. I need to know if I can book the same hotel room again so that my husband and I can have the same holiday experience again that we enjoyed so much. Again, that was with my travel company. Certain personas of a certain age, they want to go back to exactly the same hotel room, believe it or not. They want to have the same experience year on year. I need to know what kids' facilities there are at the resort so I can relax on holiday whilst the kids are entertained. When I was starting out, I was so against personas to begin with. I was really against them. What if I'm not like your persona? How can you design to that? That's garbage. And then I came across a web credible persona called Happy Kids Hannah. And if you're the person that made that persona, my hat is off to you. You did, that was amazing work. It was the first data-driven persona that I'd seen that was validated. And it was like rocket fuel in my hands. It was like gold. It was like, holy crap, this is amazing. When you see lots and lots of fiction and then you get something and you think, oh my God, I can trigger, I can do so much with this. It was this Happy Kids Hannah. The brand, I think, was Haven Holidays, and it was all about mums. And mums with the hands and the head, hands and the heart that were choosing the holiday. And after 2 or 3 rounds of testing and internal validation, the golden nugget was, if the kids are happy, I'm happy. I'm going to get a holiday because the kids are amused and doing stuff and not bugging me. So I can lie there, read my book, get a tan, chill out. Whereas if the kids aren't entertained, Dad, Mum, and you're not going to get a minute of, you don't get a holiday. And that's a big deal if you're buying a holiday. So look at featuring things like water slides, kids clubs, beaches, things that entertain the kids is a huge trigger. So that was a massive, massive, massive user need, absolute gold. I need to know what information I need to have at hand to complete this application before I start it so that I can complete it quickly and easily as possible. That came from something around, I was working in the passport office, around citizens applying for passports. If you're applying for a passport online, you're going to need some stuff. And it's a bit of a pain in the neck to find out in the process that I need that. And you go away and it times out and it's horrible. So let's talk about principles and peer-reviewed literature, because I very rarely see decent literature in personas or in projects. And as I was talking to you this morning, we kind of need a lot more science in UX. We really, really do. So there's this huge body out there. I've pulled out a couple of just random examples. How devoted are you? An examination of online music fan behavior. You know, if you're Spotify or YouTube Music, there's interesting stuff there that might be relevant. It might not be. Go have a look. If it is relevant, pop it into your container and use it to generate a hypothesis to test. It might be relevant to your audience, it might not. But if it is relevant, it could be amazing. The other one, appraising net, whatever that word is, towards insights about new markets in the tourist digital era. If you're doing tourism stuff, there is a journal called Current Issues in Tourism. Why are we not reading this stuff? There's a whole mine of stuff, and you're researchers. Go get it. It's amazing. So, populated with insight. So, let's start off. It might look like this. This is all I know. I've got my retired repeat. I've got a brief overview. So he's a retired captain of industry. That's pretty much it. Lives with his wife, blah, 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 but it's all facts. And some basic demographics that I've got from my web analytics or from maybe marketing, which is quite suspect to begin with. I then might get some user needs and some pain points in there. Add a journey, add some technology use, add some terms and language that they would use, and add maybe some tendencies. And that, over time, forms a kind of a proto-persona, a kind of a rough start on your persona. Let's just say I made that in June 2018. You must iterate, iterate, iterate. They're not going to sit in the drawer just gathering dust. So let's take our June 2018 thing that I made. Time has now gone on, and it's now December. 6 months have passed, 7 months have passed. That was June. This is December. June. December. Okay, do you see what's going on here? Demographics and tendencies have changed into less demographics and more motivations and fears as we've learned them, but there's been a problem introduced into the journey. For whatever reason, there's an additional pain point, somebody somewhere in another silo, another department did something a bit rogue, somebody put something live without testing it, market changes, stuff happens in our world. It's a digital world, it goes fast, stuff happens. So that's December 2018. By April 2019, I've gone and John Doe has replaced me. At this point now, let me just go back once to show you the change. The only thing that's changed here is the journey, and me, of course. So we've now got 2 pain points in the journey, and we're not converting as well. Well, there's a big problem at checkout. Let's go forward again to August 2019. Mary Person has now taken over, and the team have fixed those pain points. And so, can you see what's happening here? The persona is evolving over time with different people, different practitioners, as you're learning about your data. This is genuinely transformative stuff. You will make yourself look really good, your team really good, if you start to implement this level of thinking. If you don't have a deck of personas, don't be afraid to do this. Unfortunately, because there's been so much BS around personas, it's kind of stigmatized these days. People, we haven't got time for that, why would we do it? You've all got you've all got insight to store it in these. So, and as the previous speaker, Claire, I think her name was, sorry about that, was saying, if you don't share it, it effectively doesn't exist. And I think the word she used was overshare, which is absolutely bang on. I would totally agree with that. You have to distribute and engage. It's a bit like the sound of what happens when a tree crashes on an island. You know, does anybody hear it? It's the same thing. If you do research and you don't share it, it might as well have not happened. So we're done, right? Walk away. Thanks, guys. Cheers. No, absolutely not. Just to finish up here, I'm finishing up early for a change. Sorry, guys. Persona deck management. And this is super duper critically important. And this is what's going to change your lives. Kind of. Teams change over time. This is a fact of life. Churn is a thing. You don't stay with a company for 10 years. And in digital and in freelance, we know that if you're not getting the experience you want, you're generally going to bounce on again. So we see teams changing over time. That's just the nature of the marketplace. And it's particularly so in user research because we're pretty rare creatures in the marketplace. So what happens, and this breaks my poor little cold, dark heart, is why have I just spent 18 months learning about your audience in amazing detail, and then I walk away. And I take all that knowledge with me in my head, and I've gone out the front door, and I've taken all of the audience knowledge, all of that insight with me. That's wrong. I shouldn't be carrying stuff away that hasn't been left behind. And what personas do for you is allow you this intergenerational communication. It's like the cavemen writing on the walls for the first time. Okay, for the first time, you can learn between generations, and it's absolutely critically important. If we're going to become a much more user-centric discipline, I mean, I'm talking about UX in general, we must be able to hand off these insights to each other over generations. If you're going to spend all this time putting these decks together and validating them, don't let them sit in a drawer when you go. It's crazy. So the insight is lost when the practitioner leaves the business. So persona are the link between generations. Like I said, don't feel like you have to give over this packed thing full of garbage. Give what you have that's validated and solid and based on user research, based on data, and then let the subsequent generations of your team pick it up and build it up. So, with 6 minutes to spare, have we got any questions? Okay, one of the things to do is high visibility stuff. Often it's better to ask forgiveness than it is permission. A lot of the times I've gone renegade and I've done this stuff anyway. I know that sounds a bit naughty, but it works, okay? Sometimes convincing a head of digital or a marketing director of these things is a jump too far for them. It's not in their vocabulary, in their minds, at least in my experience. And I'm really sorry, I don't mean to be rude to anybody in the room. Just that's my experience. So go ahead, create a light persona, a proto-persona, based on data. If you can then use multivariate testing or A/B to prove or evidence the value of that persona, then you're talking in a language that kind of a director can fully appreciate. So we made a distinction between young and old, new and this is what we learned, this is how we applied it, this is what worked. You guys probably all know the website called Which Test Won? Anyone know? Yeah? It's basically like an A/B test where you've got, here's the control, and here's the thing, and this one we changed the button to red, and it went up by 20%. One of the most powerful things you can do is, when you've got a multivariate result, an outcome, put it on the walls everywhere in that kind of manner, but make it really, really simple. I mean, Fisher-Price simple, okay? So here's 1, here's 2, we changed this thing, this is what it did. That's it, walk away, right? You've got to put like in the big number, 30% or plus 5% conversion increase, that kind of stuff. That absolutely resonates with those guys. And once you crack the lid on it a little bit, they'll go, give me more, I want the whole thing. It's like going in, I bet you, everyone with the design skills, you've gone in, you've done some quick wins, and then all they want is quick wins. It's kind of like that. Once you've fed them once, they will be eating out of your hand.
So Nick, I'm going to caveat this with saying if everyone did personas like you just presented, I wouldn't be asking the question. Do you think personas as a deliverable have too much baggage given how many bad personas there are out there? And do you think the future is A, doing personas better, or B, producing some new deliverable which takes the best of personas and kind of makes it a thing?
Let me answer a quick question to the audience before I answer that. How many of you are agency side? Shit. I'm going to get lynched. I'm going to stand here and answer this. What has happened historically is that agencies make a lot of money from decks of personas. 20 grand sometimes, 30 grand, whatever. There's been a lot of really bad money-making persona decks built. And unfortunately, 5, 6, 10 years ago, that was commonplace, and it was a really good revenue stream for those guys. Sorry if I'm telling it too straight. We have to unpick that thinking. If you're client side, this has got 100% value because you're doing it for yourselves. There's no one making any money. The value is in the user needs and everything that comes from this, and as a data container. It's as I was just saying to this lady, you're going to have to go ahead and do something that can clearly and simply demonstrate the value. Because people have got preconceptions. The only way to break those preconceptions is to show them this shiny new thing that actually performs. Because people care about performance. They don't care about activity and I made these beautiful things. No. What did it do? What did it do for me? What did it do for the board that I have to report to my monthly plan, my quarterly budget? That's sometimes the kind of the ceiling or the barriers to fight against. But once you can show we learned some stuff, we put in this persona, and over time this persona is just getting more and more golden, more and more shiny, more amazing. You can't. It's a bit like putting the marketing director behind the glass for the first time. When they go, oh my God, why have we never done this before? It's kind of the same thing with personas. With a really good persona, it's hard to live without. Did that answer your question?
I just was wondering though whether there was, as a deliverable, whether they're kind of almost too tainted based on that historic precedent and people and whether as an industry we need to create something new that takes the best of them.
Totally. I'm not a jobs to be done person, but there are lots of you who probably are, for whom jobs to be done does a similar kind of a role. And I don't mind, I don't care whether it's jobs to be done or personae, as long as you're encapsulating those user needs.
For you, it's just a container.
Yes, it's just a container. It really is. Yeah, jobs to be done happened. I didn't keep up with it. So it's just, this is how I do things, but I know that jobs to be done absolutely performs as well. And then probably other ways of doing it. There's no rule book here. It's do what works. Well, there is a rule book, but there isn't.
Just following on from that, something I found that helps with the tracking of the data is like the knowledge Kanban. So if we're tracking on the knowledge Kanban, the insights that we have and where they've come from, and equally generations that before and after will also be putting that in, tracking what deck does that live in, what piece of study did that come from, and then your personas are taking insights from a knowledge Kanban. You've just got a trail of where the information has come from, so it's not just a persona that's left without you know, where did that researcher get that fact from? It's kind of, it's got that heritage to it.
Attribution, yeah, lovely, nice one, thank you. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, we're over time. Thank you very much for your time, guys. Come grab me out.